Allegiance. Judy, can you display the American flag?
Yes.
Okay, let's.
Let me get that. Okay.
Okay, if you'll all stand and join me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America
And to the
and
republic
to the republic
for which it stands, one
one
nation,
nation,
under God,
indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Okay, would the city clerk please call the roll?
Yes. Councilors, Judith Chandler.
Present.
Thank you. Councilor John Chada.
Here.
Councilor Julie Wolf.
Here.
Councilor Susan Wolbrook.
Here.
Councilor Steve Brimner.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Nancy Fortune.
Present.
And Mayor John Graham.
Present. Thank you.
Mhm.
Okay, I believe everyone has seen the agenda. The next item would be approval of the agenda. Do we have a motion?
I move we approve the agenda as presented.
Motion. Do we have a second? Okay, we have a second by Councilwoman Wolbrook. All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. Okay, motion passes. Okay, the next item would be public comment on non-agenda items. Judy, do we have anyone wishing to speak?
We do. I do see some hands here. So let me just get my to where it needs to be.
And
Okay. So,
before you bring them in, I would just like to remind the individuals wishing to comment that our protocol is that we request that your comments be limited to 3 minutes or so. If someone precedes you who has spoken to the same issue, we would ask you to try and minimize that or to not be repetitious. We typically don't respond to comments during the non-agenda item commentary, but if you would give your contact information to the city clerk, we would be able to get back to you if that's necessary. And we will, basically with that said, Judy, if we have our first person.
we do. So our first person is Rebecca Rattery, and she's coming over onto the screen here. Okay, Rebecca, are you able to put your video?
Oh, yes, I'm sorry.
Okay, thank you. Okay.
Okay, can you see me now? Can you hear me?
Yes. Yes. Thank you.
Okay, great. On March 17th, the governor of Colorado closed all non-essential businesses, closing many tourist attractions throughout the state, including our own little historic dinner theater. The following day, the city council closed the incline under its emergency ordinance powers. In accordance with the instructions of both the state and city, we closed our operations. We followed all the rules. We filed for disaster assistance. We filed for a variance. We kept in contact with city officials, and we pleaded with this council to open the incline to encourage foot traffic at every meeting since then. Now, we are 77 days closed with no end in sight. And what have we gained? A 41% loss in revenue. To date, the variance has not been approved by the governor's office, and even if we got approval, the timeline disallows the possibility of our opening for a summer season. Our most lucrative time of year is lost to us, and this brings us to our only hope of salvation, parking income. With the continued closure of the incline, we worry that we may not make it to the end of the year. We recognize that there are issues and concerns that you have about traffic and parking on Ruxton Avenue, but you've had 7 years to address these issues. Why pick now to fix them? How is now different from, say, 5 years ago, 3 years ago, or even 1 year ago? Well, now you have the power under your emergency ordinance to close the incline. Leverage you've not had before. Is that correct? At a time in history when small businesses in your tourist town are suffering the worst financial repercussions of a global pandemic, you've chosen this moment in time to attempt to motivate the other owners of the incline to come back to the negotiation table. It is you and no one else, not Parks and Rec, not Colorado Springs, not the National Forest Service. It's you who've chosen to hurt rather than to help your local legacy business. You, as the leadership of Manitou Springs, closed the incline, and you can reopen it under your same emergency power. We've made our case, and we've begged for your help. Will you not hear the cries of the businessmen in your district? Will you continue to prioritize your political maneuvering instead of supporting the businesses in your town? How do you think that you can maintain the ethical high ground while allowing the businesses in your own town to suffer? Maybe you can. Maybe in the end you can blame it all on the pandemic, or maybe even rioting. Who knows? But finally, should the Iron Springs Chateau close its doors, it will be a direct result of the actions taken by the City Council and no one else. We are a small business owned by veterans and women, and we cannot continue to take on these losses just to give you time to implement your new plan. How can you ask us to give you more time? You've had 7 years. Isn't it your job to support us? Can you honestly say that that is what you're doing? By almost 8,000 signatures on a petition asking you not to implement a reservation system. From my perspective, I can tell you no, you are not supporting us, nor are you serving the interests of the community at large. You are serving your own interest, and in doing so, you are actively preventing the survival of the Iron Springs Chateau, a business that has been a part of your community for 140 years. We again, and for the third time, and in recognition that you have the power, we ask you to, we request that you reopen the incline immediately. And that's all I have.
Okay. Great, thank you. Thank you.
Okay, we have two more that have their hands raised.
And City Clerk, if I might ask, do we know if anyone else wants to speak to the same issue, basically to the incline closure of the Iron Springs Chateau?
I don't have the details of what they would wish to speak on.
Okay, all right, I understand. Okay, let's go ahead and go to the next speaker then, please.
Okay, so this one has a title of TOSC staff, and I don't know if this is going to be Susan Davies.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, is that who's speaking? Susan Davies?
It is Susan Davies, Trails and Open Space Coalition. Thank you. And I'm one of TOSC staff. I'm not the whole thing, but I am part of TOSC staff. So if I could address you briefly, I would appreciate that opportunity.
Certainly.
Thank you.
Go ahead, please.
Thank you. So thank you for this chance. The Trails and Open Space Coalition has been around for about 30 years now, a little over. And we worked hard to be the eyes, ears, and voice for the public who uses trails, parks, and open spaces. And this is very near and dear to our hearts because TOSC has been very involved with the incline from the very beginning. We spent scores of hours on the management plan, participating in that public process. And then after that, we helped form Incline Friends, which has been around since that time. And they are a group of volunteers committed to improving the experience for users of the incline, as well as protecting the asset. So they have volunteer days where they do work on it. And I've been up there many times to help with some of those cleanup days and improving some of the trail up in there. So this is very important to us. And last week, my board of directors voted unanimously to bring this message to you. We ask you, please reopen the incline. When you closed it initially, we understood it was the right thing to do. There was too much uncertainty about the danger. And knowing that trail and knowing the popularity of that trail, We had no problem with the decision you made. But it's time. It's time from the steps that the governor's taking. It's about time for playgrounds to reopen, which they probably will in the next week, and all kinds of other facilities are open. And we know that the incline and trails like it contribute to the health and the mental health of the users. We know that there are people that use the incline on a regular basis that may not be able to belong to a gym or sports club, but the incline is their resource for those things, those activities. Now, we're committed to working with the Incline Friends on an ambassador program so that we can have at peak hours somebody stationed at the foot of the incline to help people make better choices. You know, we recognize that your emergency services at times may be tasked, and so there are ways that we can help get people up there safely and down safely. We think those things are very doable, but keeping it closed indefinitely is not the right choice. And we would ask you, let us be part of the solution. Let us help you get it open, but please don't leave this indefinitely. This needs to be open. It's one of the few trails, if any other trail in the state of Colorado is still closed. This is an important trail and it should be reopened. My organization probably gets 2 to 3 calls a day. Is it open? When will it be reopened? We think there's a way to get that done. We'd like to work with you on a solution, but let's do it now. Let's not wait weeks and weeks and kicking the can down the road. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Thanks for your time. Appreciate it.
Okay. And we have, our next speaker is Isla Quinn.
Okay. All righty. You can bring her in, please.
I clicked on that, so she should, getting her. I'll unmute her in case she can't.
I'm trying to do this.
Okay,
I don't know whether you can hear me or not.
we can.
Okay. I know that I have a great many friends whose livelihood depend on the Iron Springs Chateau, and I understand their concern. My concern is that I am, and a number of people that I know in the immediate area have severe health issues that, much as we want to downplay the COVID-19 epidemic, it is a reality for us. All I am asking is that a cessation of the enormous mass of people that come through my block on Pilot Knob, Bruxton, just some control over the numbers. I am not asking that the incline be closed indefinitely, but it affects our lives. And I understand that that's not a major concern for the majority of the people who want to hike the incline. I do understand, but I am just asking for some consideration and some lessening of the number of people that come up here daily, hundreds and hundreds of people. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, it looks like we have 2 more hands that are up, so let me go
More. Okay.
those over.
Judy, do we need them to address their name and have their address?
Yes, please.
We should, yeah.
Okay, so our next speaker is Nancy Wilson. And Nancy, if you can, once you get your volume, there you go. You can state your address, please.
Hi, Nancy Wilson, 227 Pilot Knob. And this is a minor thing, but I've been thinking a lot about it lately relative to the incline. I'd like us to stop referring to the incline as a trail. The incline is not a trail. The incline is an attraction. Any trail, and I'm not speaking for OSAC, but I am a member of the Open Space Committee. Any trail in this county are familiar with doesn't attract 5,000 visitors a day. The incline, in my opinion, is not a trail. Certainly Bar Trail is, and Bar Trail is being mightily damaged by users of the incline. just not intentionally, but strictly because of the volume. So I think in these discussions, it might be start referring to the incline as an attraction, because it certainly isn't a trail by most of our sense of the word. That's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. Very, very good. Okay, if the city clerk, if you could bring in the next speaker, please.
Yes. Next one is Ellen Dulwich.
Mr. Dulwich?
We get to see his dog.
Yeah. So
Yeah,
there-
that's Hannah. But anyway, I live at 210 Villa Vista,
I'm sorry,
and
please.
I just want to very briefly say, you know, back when we first considered opening the incline, I was a big advocate. I really championed it on the Planning Commission. I was thrilled. We had this three-way partnership. We had stakeholders. We were going to deal with it. We were going to make it a really great venue for the city and for the community. And basically, until you guys this year, our city, everybody has dropped the ball, and I have to commend you all for stepping up and saying, no, we're done putting it off. We're going to manage it now, and I hope you keep that up. And it's going to be a lot of flack we're going to get, but it's the right thing for our community. You know, I have to agree with Nancy Wilson. It's not a trail, it's an attraction. And it's an attraction that has gotten out of hand. And thank you very much for the work you're doing to get it under control. And stick with it. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
That was the last
Yeah,
raised.
that's the last one. Okay. Very good.
hand.
Okay. So our next item is our consent calendar. We have 3 items on the consent calendar. First item is appointment of Tim Beeson as an alternate member of the Open Space Advisory Committee. Second item is art installation, the Spirit of Manitou art installation. Third is consideration of resolution 2120 expressing the intent of the city to be reimbursed for certain expenses relating to the construction of water and sewer improvements. Do we have a motion to approve the consent calendar, to accept?
I move approval of the consent calendar as read.
As read. We have
I'll
a motion.
second.
We have a second. Any discussion?
I'd like to thank Tim for stepping forward as a volunteer. I think that's always great when we have a member of the community that's willing to serve. Thank you.
Okay. Well said. Councilwoman Wolf, did I see you? Did you raise your
Oh,
hand?
sorry, I was doing thumbs up.
Oh, okay. All right. Nothing wrong with that. Okay. Any further comments? Okay, let's go ahead and vote. All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Okay, consent calendar is approved unanimously. Okay, new business. The first item is the match board applicants consideration and selection. And before we get started, I'd like to just kind of explain a few points. This is, I think this would be challenging if we were in city council chambers, and doing it over Zoom is a little bit more challenging even then. So just to kind of give everybody an idea of the process, we'll go through basically sort of an interview process. We can ask some questions of candidates. The candidates have prepared, several of them have submitted questions for us, for city council to respond to. I had a recommendation from one council member that we should ask the question, what is your personal motivation for being on this board? I'd like to keep responses in all cases to 2 minutes or less. Each council member will have a chance to ask a follow-up question. And the candidates, if they do have clarifying question, if they need clarification on a question, we'll go ahead and entertain that as well. This could be pretty time consuming. We've got 13 candidates. In my opinion, they all look pretty good. So this is a nice problem to have. So we'll go through the interview process. Council will then move to a deliberation process. The voting, I think, needs to be addressed a little bit here. The voting will be done by email. I had earlier thought we could do it by chat, but after discussion with the city clerk, what we'd like to do is email her our selections, and she sent out instructions earlier today on how we're to do that.
Oh,
We'll vote for 10 individuals. Your first candidate will receive, your first choice will receive 10 points, the second one 9 points, and so on until your 10th selection will receive 1 point. And we'll try to get a ranking on that. So what we would expect is that if we can rank 7 individuals, the top 7 would be regular members of the MAC Advisory Board. The 8th, 9th, and 10th ranked individuals would be the alternates, and individuals beyond that, we appreciate their interest.
John, could I?
I'm sorry,
Could
yes.
I interrupt? Yeah,
Yeah.
just that the initial vote via email is the preliminary vote. We still will need to formally vote on final decision.
Yes,
So
I'm sorry.
if that's
Yes.
confusing.
A good point. Yes, I'm sorry. There are a lot of moving parts here. I'm sorry, Councilwoman Chandler? You have a
Could I
question?
just ask that each candidate, when they get up to speak, lets us know how long they would like to serve? There's 1, 2, 3, and 4 years, and not all the respondents indicated. So if they could let us know that, if they know that, I'd appreciate it.
Okay, great. And now that's the ranking. It would be nice if everything worked out smoothly, but in the event of a tie, we'll have to address that. If it's a tie between, if it's a critical juncture, say the 7th and 8th persons, where the difference would be between a regular position and an alternate, we'll have to come up with a mechanism for breaking that tie. If it's a tie between 2 individuals, we can probably just do that with a simple vote. If we somehow end up with several people, it may not be resolved that quickly. And we could have 1 or more runoff votes, and we could even possibly have to continue to another meeting. I guess we'll see how that goes. But I did want to call that to individuals' attention, to people's attention. There are some problems with Zoom, or some limitations, I should say. So in the event that something like that presents a wrinkle in the process, please be advised that we'll have to deal with that. And I especially want to call that to the attention of the candidates. Again, the length of term, as Councilor Chandler said, that's important too. There's some other things that we can address after we go through the voting process. The expectation would be that when we do vote, we'll go ahead, council members will email our results to the city clerk, and then we'll take a break, probably something on the order of 15 minutes, to give her a chance to tally up the results. And she'll be assisted by Amber, the assistant city clerk. That said, councilors, do you have any questions or suggestions? Or Denise, I see you've got your hand up.
I'm just wondering, should Roy, myself, and Jeff Parker be pulled over so that you guys can see everybody? Is that appropriate or not? Whatever you need, I just want to offer that.
Okay, yeah, if we could actually have a little more, space so that we could actually see the candidates, that would be helpful. Yeah. So, Judy, if you can do that.
Like I said, Roy is hard to pull off because he's my
Okay.
co-host. I've got a lot of names here. Give me a second. And there are a couple of our candidates I have not found in the list. So I would just ask if you're one of the candidates and you're not over on the panelist side right now, if you could raise your hand, and that will allow me to find you quicker on the list.
Okay. And if I could ask council members, does what I spoke to, does that seem to make sense to you? I mean, if you have suggestions, this would be a good time to say. Okay.
Sounds good, John. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you. Well, I would propose I'm sorry.
Well, I was just going to say, I don't have Matt Kavanaugh on the list that I can see. So if you're there, Matt, please use the raise hand function. Douglas Edmondson and Jason Wells. Those are my 3 that I have not located on the list.
Okay.
You've shown up. Please raise your hand and I'll be happy to pull you over.
Okay. Well, if it's all right, why don't we go ahead and start in alphabetical order. That would be, I guess, Anna Andrews Mills. Is she available?
I am,
She
yes.
is waiting right there.
Okay.
Is there a specific question I'm answering, or I'm sorry?
I'm sorry. Yeah, I think one question we're going to ask everybody is basically, what's your motivation for being on the, wanting to be on the MAC advisory board? What's your personal motivation for this?
I've always been interested in arts. I've been involved in the community, both in Manitou and in Colorado Springs for some time. I got an art degree when I was in college. I believe in the power of arts and culture to make the world a better place. And if we can do that as a town to bring and build stronger community through arts and culture, then I'd like to help do that.
Okay.
Put it very shortly. Thank you.
Great. Council, the format on this whole interview process is a little freeform. So if I think we could perhaps entertain one question to a candidate, and then we'll go to the next one and potentially come back. Does anyone have a question at this point for Anna? Okay. Well, Judy, then if we could go to the next candidate.
Okay, that would be Matt Kavanaugh, and he is signed in here, so.
Yes, I did. Okay, great.
So Matt? I don't see you as being muted. Are you able to speak at this point? Nope, hang on. Matt, we can't hear you.
Yeah, I can hear you. I can hear you now fine.
Now we can hear you.
Okay.
Okay, so Matt, we're going to ask every candidate the same initial question, and that is, what's your personal motivation for wanting to be on the MAC advisory board?
Well,
and if you go ahead.
I'll move quickly. I want to see this through to the finish. We've moved past the weather. Now is the time for how, the time for competent planning, execution, and communication. And as the co-lead for bringing this issue to a vote, in my other life as a writer, professor, and military officer, I think I bring skills to contribute to the effort. As tough as it is now for the city and businesses, our nonprofits are hurting too. They're going to need a boost if we're going to get Manitou moving forward again. So I look forward to contributing to that.
Okay, great. Council, anyone with a quick question for Mr. Kavanaugh? Mayor Pro Tem Fortune?
Yeah, hi, Matt. One concern I had is that you recently left Parab after less than, or about a year and a half. And you were appointed, I believe, in October of 2018. So I'm wondering, what would your commitment be to this board over that board, that we could count on you to stay on it?
Thanks for the question. As I described in my resignation notice, I felt strongly that the board leadership and direction was consistently disorganized, arguably inappropriate or unethical in the way grants were awarded, and it wasn't interested in important Parab matters. For example, the library or the park space surrounding it, both part of the city ordinance that governs Parab. As such, I felt the only recourse was to raise these concerns and resign. I don't see how that would impact this matter, except to say that I've seen how a board should not be run, and I'm committed to finding a way to make this not go in that direction.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Judy, if we could have the next candidate, please.
Okay, that would be Rob Gannon.
Okay.
So he just needs to unmute himself. There we go.
Hi, can you hear me?
Barely. If you could just speak up a little louder, please.
Okay, how's that?
A little louder?
I'll unplug my headphones.
Okay.
Any better?
Much better. Thank you.
Okay, there's the volume. Alrighty. Thank you for the time, and also, so I don't forget, I put down that I'd like to serve for 2 years. And
2
so, I'm sorry?
That was 2 years?
Yes.
Okay, right. Okay, so Mr. Dannon, we're asking each candidate the same question initially here, and that is, what is your personal motivation for being on the MAC Advisory Board? So if you could
Sure.
speak.
My pleasure. I'll try to be succinct because of the time factor particularly, but I'll sum it up. It's threefold. And I'll pull from excerpts from both my letter of intent and the cover page for the application. My main thrust initially was my involvement with the library. I was on the last set of Board of Trustees prior to becoming part of the Pikes Peak Library District. I was a volunteer there. I was board president for a while. And I was on the original task force, which turned into the campaign committee to get successful passage of the library to be part of the Pikes Peak Library District. And so I've been very much involved with the library over the years and watching it grow and expand, at least in its services at this point. And as I said in my letter, this serving on the match would be the next chapter, if you will, in terms of my efforts with the library. But I know that's the first fold. The second fold is knowing that just one aspect of the advisory board. And so I addressed that as well in my my application cover letter, I guess. And just saying that I understand it's one part of many that needs to work together as a workable whole. There are many different facets that make up the match, and the library is just one of them. And we need to work together to form consensus on how to move forward for all the moving parts of this. So I do fully understand that. And saying what I said about the library, it's just one part, and I want to be involved in the whole process. And the last thing is, in this time, day and age of what we're going through, we always seem to fall back on the humanities to help us to get through the tough times. And part of the anecdote is living in Manitou Springs. And the match focuses on just what it says, art and culture and heritage. And I can't think of a better anecdote to be involved in to move forward many of the missions that we have as a community. So thank you.
Good. Thank you. Council, do we have one quick question for Mr. Dannon?
Yes, I do. Rob, was that 2 or 4 years you wanted to serve for?
2.
Thank you.
And
Okay.
John, Mayor, I have something I meant to ask the first two is if they're only willing to serve for those or if they have flexibility, you know, if they would be willing to serve 1, 2, 3, 4 or be an alternate, or if there's no flexibility in there, I think we probably would be well served to know that as well.
That's true. So, Mr. Dannon, then you had requested 2 years. Would you be willing to serve a different duration if it came down to that?
Yeah, I would be willing to consider, depending on what the amount of the term is. And I won't go into my rationale as to why I picked 2 over other ones, but yes, I would be willing to consider. And
Okay.
to go to Mayor Pro Tem's question about alternate, I don't think I would want to serve as an alternate if that's what I was to be designated as.
Okay, great. Thank you, Mr. Dannon.
Sure.
The city clerk, if you could bring in the next candidate, please.
Okay, great. Sorry. All right, thank you. Sure. Okay, bye-bye. Okay, sorry about that. I was trying to get a hold of our one candidate that just hadn't made it on yet. So,
Okay.
so our next candidate is Douglas Edmondson, and he should be on the call. There he is. Ready to go?
Greetings all.
Hi. Good evening, Mr. Ed. We're starting off by asking each candidate essentially the same question, and that is basically, what's your personal motivation for wanting to serve on the Match Advisory Board?
Well, I've always been impassioned by the arts in Manitou Springs. My mother was one of the original Commonwealth artists. I'm involved with the Manitou Arts Center and their programming. I sat on the active board for the Manitou Springs Heritage Center. Right now, I sit on the board for the Mineral Springs Foundation, and I'm also one of the Historic Preservation Commissioners, vice chair, actually. I really just think that this is an excellent opportunity for fledgling groups to be at least seed financed for the city and their interaction with the public and our visiting tourists. Obviously, that's our bread and butter in this town. And I think, going beyond the appointed benefactors from this particular tax, the MAC, the Heritage Center, the library, I think more importantly are some of the smaller groups that could bring a lot to the table, as they say, out on the street. Folks that are performing arts, plein air art, things of that nature. I think it remains to be seen in the future what some of these groups that may not even be in existence right now could bring to bear for our community.
Right. Good. Thank you. And I believe you stated in your application that you would prefer a 3-year term.
Yeah, it's sort of kind of is in concert with my my time at the Historic Preservation Commission. I've been there for about a year now. So at the end of that period of time, my 4 years there, 3 years with this, then I'm sure I would probably look at staying on with both.
Okay. If a different term, would you consider taking a different term?
Sure.
Say 2 years, 4 years?
Yeah, I don't plan on going anywhere.
Okay. All right. And you would want to serve as a regular member and not as an alternate?
Yeah, absolutely.
I think you made that clear in the application. Okay, council, would we have, say, one brief question for Mr. Edmondson? Anyone? I guess not. Thank you, Mr. Edmondson.
You're welcome.
And if the city clerk would bring in our next candidate.
Okay, so our next candidate is Sarah Gallagher. And she's on the screen. She just needs to unmute herself.
Did that work?
Yes, it did.
Okay. Hi. So
Hi.
I'm
Welcome.
Sarah Gallagher. Can you
Hi.
hear me okay?
Welcome. Yes, yes. So we're asking each candidate essentially the same question, and that is, what's your personal motivation for wanting to serve on the Match Advisory Board? And we're looking for an answer in 2 minutes or less, if you could, please.
Okay, thank you. So I love Manitou. I love living in Manitou Springs, and I loved being part of this community. This is actually the second time that I've lived here. I've been here about 6 years this time. I've been looking for ways to become more involved in the community. And one of the ways that I've done that has been getting more involved in the school. And I also recently started working at the library because I love being a part of this town. I understand that there may be some thoughts about there being conflicts of interest with so many of us being highly involved in Manitou. I'm committed to remaining objective with the decisions that need to be made. I feel like heritage and culture and arts are a big part of what make this town a place that we love to be and what bring people here. And so I feel like it's really important that this initial group of people are committed to setting this match up for success, for doing a lot of organization on the front end to make sure that this is something that succeeds over time. And I feel like with my background in nonprofits and grants and project management, that I have, enough experience in the arts, being a writer and a former studio artist, the MAC, and in the nonprofit side, that I can understand where a lot of these interests are coming from and try to work together as a team to really set this up for success, particularly when it's been something that has been a little bit controversial.
All righty. Good. Thank you. And I believe on your application that you said you would accept any term up to 4 years. Is that correct?
Yeah, I'm flexible.
Okay. And you were seeking a regular position as opposed to an alternate. Is that correct also?
I think I could be open to being an alternate if that was needed.
Okay. All righty. So at this point, I would say, council, does anyone have a quick question for Sarah Gallagher? And okay, I guess not. So Sarah, thank you for your time.
Thank
And
you.
Stay tuned. We've kept some questions to answer from questions from candidates, so we will have some answers and stuff. So stay tuned. I believe our next candidate is Randy Hodges. Judy, if you could bring Mr. Hodges in.
He's in the meeting and he's unmuted, so he's ready to go.
Okay, Randy.
Mayor?
Mayor, hi. So the question is, what's your personal motivation for wanting to serve on the Match Advisory Board?
First, I'd like to answer the question that I'm initially applying for a 2-year term, but I'm open to serve for any other terms. And
Okay.
I prefer to not be an alternate. But the reason my personal interest in this is I feel like I bring a lot of experience with city government, the residents from my time on council. Anytime you're distributing funds, and this is a tax collection fund, it can get very difficult to do. And a lot of people are going to be vying for those funds. Got a lot of different entities involved, and I feel like the time I've spent on committees and on council, I have a lot of experience making objective decisions, and I would like to see this money be put to really beneficial use to both the residents and the business community.
Okay, good. Thank you. Council, does anyone have a question? Any questions? I guess
No.
not. Thank you, Mr. Hodges. City Clerk, if we could have the next candidate, please.
That'd be Michael Howell,
Okay.
and he is also over on the panelist side, and he's unmuted.
Okay. Mr. Howell, so we'd like to start off. I want to first verify, I believe you had requested, said that you were interested in 2-year term. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. If other terms were available, would you consider a different term?
I would consider different terms, but not an alternate.
Not an alternate. Okay. All right. So you that question. Okay. Great. So you probably have heard the essential question we're asking everybody, and that is, what's your personal motivation for wanting to serve on the Match Advisory Board?
I think this is an opportunity for Manitou Springs to really make an impact across the state, not just within the town. The match funds, the way the funds will be dispersed, is going to really bring us into the forefront of small communities across the state. Why do I want to do this? Obviously, I believe in Manitou. I've been here for quite some time. And I would like to take my experience and put it to use in something that's as broad as the match is going to be. And I'd like to make the match very successful so that people across the state can see Manitou as more than just kind of an artsy tourist town, but something that has a legitimate place within the arts and culture across the state.
Good. Thank you. Council, does anyone have a question for Mr. Howell? Guess not. All right. Thank you, Mr. Howell.
Okay. Thank you, everybody.
If the city clerk could bring in the next person, please.
That would be Neil Minch. And no, I saw him there. There he is. Okay.
Yeah,
Available.
I'm here. Yeah, good evening. So I think the first comment I've got is when I looked at everyone's applications, we've got a great talent pool here. So I think whoever the 7 are, it's going to be a very good, committee. I'm not interested in an alternate, particularly on this board. I would not be a good alternate. I'm looking for a 3 or 4 year term, ideally. My motivation is really in being part of designing the process to make this a success, with one of the measures that if we had the vote again, we'd have more people voting yes than we did the first time. I think in November, December timeframe, I met with a number of the current council members as well as some previous ones, just to talk about where the map was and where it was going. And I shared some research I did with both Breckenridge and Steamboat Springs that have similar kinds of programs. It isn't a specific tax, but they have a pool of dollars that go into these kinds of programs. And I think there's some very good learnings there. And notice that even though I'm an active board member of the Heritage Center, I think to build on Sarah's comment earlier, those of you who know me know that I'm a pretty objective individual, and I'm really interested in this being a successful program, building on Michael Howell's comment that people look up to across the state. And that's it. Thanks.
Great. Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Midge? Okay. Thank you, Mr. Midge. We'll move on to the next candidate, please.
Okay, that would be Pat Sitzman.
Okay.
She is also over here on the side. She just needs to unmute herself. There we go. Hi, Pat.
Hi.
Hi. Okay. So, Pat, Patsy, to start off, let me just check here. Some people indicated what kind of terms they'd be willing to accept. Do you have a preference?
No, I'm highly flexible. I'm interested in this project.
Okay, great. And I noticed on your application, it said you wanted to be a regular, considered as a regular member.
Yeah.
Would you consider being an alternate?
I would rather be a permanent.
Okay, all right, that's fine. Okay, so the basic question everybody's being asked is, what is your personal motivation for wanting to be on the MAC Advisory Board?
My personal motivation is, one, this is a process that has to be built. And if some of you know my background, I've been doing the same kind of process, this business fiduciary responsibility, for years. And I think that my skill contribution would help not only what Michael said and what Neil said in terms of building a process, but make it very clear to the recipients of this money how we can do this and set a precedent Colorado-wide. Somebody's going to be looking at us in some little town someplace and saying, wow, they did this, and it's very successful. And the way to do that is to set up so a path can be followed for others.
Okay.
This is a budget distribution in basis. And it's a little bit political, but I think that we can overcome some of those prejudices that we will, of course, run into. I want the money, that kind of thing, by making the process very clear and communicating it. Simple as that.
Good. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Council, anyone have a question for Patsy Sitzman?
Wow.
Okay. All right. Let's go on to the next candidate then, please.
Next one is Shanti Toll.
Hey, Mr. Toll. Good evening. Just quickly up front, I think on your application I didn't see a term that you were seeking? Would you consider any term, or what would you prefer?
I am flexible on any term.
Okay. And would you consider serving as an alternate versus a regular board member?
Yes, because I think that we need 10 people on this, and I would definitely advocate for the alternates to take an active role in this, because oftentimes a regular person is not there, you know, a regular member, and if the alternates are active, I think they really can contribute a lot.
Good. Okay. All right. Thank you. And now the essential questions you've no doubt heard. It is what's your personal motivation for wanting to serve on the MAC Advisory Board?
I think first that having watched City Council and the art community, that I am looking for a good interaction between City Council and this board and the general community at all in total. One of the things that I think is important is the word culture. It definitely needs to include the environment, because we have art and we have history, but the other part of who we are is how we fit into our part of the planet. So I think that is important. I also think that wellness is an important component of culture. And I helped create the Manitou Springs Community Foundation, which was going before, but I'm on that board. I'm also on the Arts Council board. The other thing that I think that I want to foster is creativity. And what I bring to the board, really, I think, is a real commitment and understanding and success in community engagement. Because I do think that reaching out to the community and keeping them involved is an important part of what the match has to do.
Good. Thank you. Any council members have questions for Mr. Toll? Okay. Thank you, Mr. Toll. And I believe our next applicant is Jason Wells.
Yes.
I'm here.
Okay. Okay. City Clerk is, Mr. Wells is available. I'm sorry, I can't see him. I just.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay, so you're okay. Welcome, Mr. Wells. In checking your application, I believe you said you would prefer a 2-year term. Is that correct?
I would accept any term. I would prefer to sit as a primary, but would accept an alternate. It sounds like there are some folks who are absolutely adamant about serving in a primary capacity, and recognizing that, I would certainly accept an alternate position if that's what it came down to. But I would prefer a primary seat.
Understood. Okay, good. Well, then you're probably familiar with the basic question for the evening, and that is, what's your personal motivation for wanting to serve on this board?
Sure. Well, as most of you know, I've been out of local government for over a couple of years now, and after a 12-year career serving as a local government administrator and chief executive, it was an amazingly rewarding career, and on a day-to-day basis and overall. And I've definitely been feeling somewhat of a vacancy the last couple of years, and it's kind of compounded by my wanting to serve and to give back to the community I live in and love dearly enough that I get into entrepreneurship, business ownership from that career just to stay here in Manitou Springs, because it is what it is. We love it, and certainly the initiatives that this thing is going to serve are what very much what makes it the appealing place that it is, and what compelled me to do everything I could to stay here. That said, just aside from the sort of the personal yearning for the involvement, just the practical skill set I've developed over 12 years seems to be a really good fit. I can't just set aside my experience in municipal governance, and so I'm feeling like the muscles that you have to use to do that sort of, I'm getting atrophy, and I've got a desire to somehow exercise them again. I can't do that given the challenging business that I'm trying to start up, but this seemed like a wonderful way to apply my skill set to some community needs and to truly give back in a way that's particularly apolitical, that was my charge in the 12 years that I served as a lead staff member, was to put the politics on the shelf and just get things done. And I would bring a lot of those practical skills to the table. including my legal background, which I think will be very useful if the city doesn't want to rack up tremendous legal bills throughout this process.
Good, thank you. Council member have a question
Thank
for
you
Mr.
all.
Wells? We're not very curious tonight, I guess.
You've trained,
We've got a lot
John,
of people to get through.
Yeah, actually, the packets were pretty informative. I thought it was pretty well done. So thanks, Mr. Wells. Appreciate your time.
Thank you.
And I believe our next candidate is Nancy Wilson.
Yes. And we just need to unmute her and then she's good to go.
Hey.
Hi, Nancy.
Hi. My personal motivation for serving is I've always been civically involved, and I'm really excited about the possibility of this position because I think it really marries my skills with the opportunity to be involved. I have a long history in nonprofit management. My education is as a nonprofit administrator, and I think this is so important to our city. I think it's vitally important that this organization, and I'm so excited to see the other applicants because it would be really fun to serve with any and all of you. But super important that we put together a transparent process that builds trust in our community so that they can really feel good and in fact wonderful about how we are going to use their tax dollars. When I read the application or the job description for this position, I thought, that's me, right down to some of the more specific things like having some background with the Creative District. I facilitated the plan for the Manitou Springs Creative District. I've attended Colorado Creative District's annual meetings. And I have a deep background in nonprofits. One of the things that I think people look at when they look at a committee like this is, oh, what fun to give away money. I've been on that side of giving away money, giving away large sums of money or deciding who gets money for large foundations in the past. And I can tell you it's one of the most difficult jobs I've ever done. So I hope I can lend my experience in nonprofits and foundations and some of those kinds of things. And I would really look forward to serving with all the folks and any of the folks who have applied for this position. I'm excited to see the depth of experience. Finally, I'm happy to serve in any of the positions that council could use me in.
Thank you. Any council members have questions for Nancy Wilson? Councilor Wolf?
Thank you. I'm not sure if I missed it. Nancy, did you indicate what your preference would be as to the duration of your term?
I did not. I know how difficult it can be to set up a rotation like this when people have specific things that they want, and just plug me in if you decide to, wherever you can use me.
Thank you.
We could classify you as flexible, is that right?
That's right.
Okay, good. Okay, great. All right, well, we have one more candidate to go. Thank you, Mrs. Wilson. Yeah, Lori Wood.
Hi, Lori Wood here, 211 Illinois Avenue, Manitou, for 31 years. I have a long history of involvement in all aspects of community life in Manitou Springs. I'm currently the co-president with Ralph Rutan of the Manitou Springs Creative District. I believe I have a proven ability to work with diverse constituencies within our community in positive and constructive ways to get things done. MAC involves many of my most personal favorite institutions in this town, and I'd be excited for the opportunity to serve. I'm flexible. Whatever the council deems necessary, I would be happy to fill.
Great. Do we have any questions for Lori Wood? Okay, I guess not. Thank you, Mrs. Wood.
Thank you.
All right. Well, council, I think the packets were pretty comprehensive and provide a lot of background on individuals. So I think probably that's muted our necessity of asking questions. However, the table's been turned on us, and several of the candidates submitted questions for us. So what I'd like, I know, it doesn't seem fair, does it? Or maybe it is fair. Okay.
That seems typical of an art community.
It is, yeah. So that's clever. Okay, so we've got 3 questions. What I'd like to do, I guess, is read the question and then let council respond, and hopefully that'll satisfy the curiosity of the candidates and the folks in the audience. First question: will the monies received under the MAC Ordinance 2719, regardless of the amount, be held in a restricted account set aside exclusively for match, or can they be tapped for other city-related expenses? Is there anyone who wants to tackle that question? Mayor Pro Tem.
Yeah, and feel free, Denise or if Becca's on to correct me, but just like the Conservation Trust Fund or the Open Space Fund, they are fence dollars. They need to, they can only be spent in accordance with the initiative as voted on by the public.
Right. Councilor,
within that, there's a lot of flexibility, but it has to be in accordance with the language in the initiative.
Okay. Councilor Chandler, did I see you wanting to add on to that? Oh, you're muted. Judith, you're muted.
Where'd you go?
Judith, now you're...
Now she's gone.
I think she disconnected instead of pushing the mute button.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think she hit
Well,
her mute button too.
I'm sure she'll come back.
Video off.
Hopefully we'll get her back. Are there any other council members who'd like to respond to that question?
Oh, Judy's back. Judith is back.
Okay, Judith, are you there?
No, she's
still muted here.
She's on mute.
I know.
Unmute.
Well, let me unmute. There we go. Okay.
There you go.
So as you know, that because we can't start taking the tax dollars out until July 1st, that we wouldn't, the board would not be dispersing funds until 2021.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Okay. Good point. Okay. Any additional information in responding to that question? Okay. I hope that's a satisfactory answer. I think it is. The second question, and this references the term close coordination, and this phrase is stated in the posted board member responsibilities. I would like to ask council members, either collectively or individually, how they envision the match advisory board working in close coordination with council. So, Councilor Wolf.
Thank you. Well, I would expect that the board, as a number of the applicants have mentioned, that the board will initially be working on a protocol to determine eligibility for the funds, priorities for the funds. And I would imagine that they would bring their priority outline proposal to council for our feedback and input before they actually go ahead and decide which entities should deserve which funds, or whether certain funds should be put on hold for a year for some reason to spend, later. But that's how I would see it, is that they're going to create the system used to decide how to disperse the funds and present that to us for feedback.
Correct.
Good, good, thank you. Do other council members, would you like to add on to that?
Yeah, if I could, I completely agree with Councilwoman Wolf. And additionally, there will be a council liaison. We'll talk about this later, but council liaison assigned to this board, just like every other board or commission that we have, to facilitate that close communication.
Good, good, thank you. And for my 2 cents, I think one of the things I'd like to see is programs that are cognizant of other things that are going on in the city. If we could integrate some of the activities that the match group is focused on with other things going on in the city, I think we'd get some good leverage out of that. That's just a thought. Do we have anything else on that question? Okay, let's go on to the third question.
Mayor? Mayor
yeah.
John.
Yeah.
A couple things. First of all, so you'll have a council liaison and also a staff liaison person for support. In the packet listing the some of the suggestions for the advisory board is our monthly reports to council for feedback on it either monthly or on an as need to know basis. And so I envision that as we need to meet a little bit more frequently, and then we'll review those updates, and so there'll be lots of support and communication back and forth.
Good points. Very good points. Okay. Okay, then the third point, which is third question, which really is a nice segue. Our Councilor Chandler, your comments were a nice segue. Scope of responsibilities of the advisory board. What are the scope of responsibilities for the advisory board in your opinion? For example, is this board just to serve as a fundraising arm for the match, or more than that? If so, what are the responsibilities? What other responsibilities would you consider? Councilor Wolf?
Yeah, thank you. I don't consider this to be a fundraising board at all.
No.
Like not even 1%. This board is not supposed to be raising money. We're getting the money from the tax dollars. The board is supposed to comply with the ordinance that says 2/3 of it gets used for building improvement, 1/3 for, I don't know exactly how it's worded, nonprofit art groups, and that's it. And you decide the system, you decide the format, you create your outline on priorities, and then you plug the facts into your program and decide who's deserving or whether you want to put funds on hold and have more money to spend next year. But I'm not aware of any fundraising obligations at all.
Right. Thank you, Councilor Wolf.
Am I right? I mean, that's just my understanding. I'd like, oh, maybe Nancy can tell me if she agrees or not. I didn't see anything about fundraising in the law.
No, it's my understanding also. Would any other council person like to speak to that?
Mayor Pro Tem
Yes, I
Hazel.
could. I would again like to agree with Councilwoman Wolf. I don't see it as a fundraising function. I would say that the primary function, as has been stated, will be first to organize themselves, second to, in accordance with the boards and commissions ordinance, and to propose additional responsibilities under that so that that can ultimately be approved, as well as their number one priority is simply to determine what the implementation guidance is, implementation for the initiative, and bring that to council for approval, and then to actually implement it is how I see it. Now there are, as with any board and commission, that board and commission can come up with other things that can be approved by council, or council can give other tasks as assigned as well. So you might, just a thought, but the primary purpose of this board is to develop the implementation guidance and then to implement it with council's approval. Make recommendations.
Right, and I would second the previous remarks of Councilor Wolf and Mayor Pro Tem Fortune. And I think as we get farther into the evening after the election or selection of the candidates, I was going to speak to some of the things that the city anticipates the board will be doing as part of their initial activities. And that's essentially what Mayor Pro Tem Fortune had spoken to it. So we're not looking at this as a fundraising organization. I don't think we're looking at pancake breakfasts or bingo. We're looking at implementation guidance for putting the MAC proposal together and working with the city. And we can speak to that in a little greater detail later on. But I think we've hit that in sufficient detail. Okay, council. At this point, I guess we've got the option. We've been at this for this part of it for about an hour. We can go back and ask more questions of the candidates if you would like to do that. I thought it might also be useful for us to speak a little bit as to what we are looking for in the in the membership or the makeup of the match board. And then we can move into a voting phase if you'd like, but you can certainly entertain your preferences at this point.
And Councillor Wilbrook has her hand up, Mayor.
Okay, yeah, Susan?
Hi, thank you all. I have one question before we deliberate and discuss this. And I hope I get this right, but I didn't hear anyone mention Hiawatha Gardens, which is a part of this ordinance. And I don't know the quickest way to do this, but it is an important part of this ballot initiative. It's in there just like all the other things that you mentioned. And I don't know if it's possible for each person to give a 1 minute or less response to Hiawatha. It just seems odd that no one mentioned it.
Okay, that's a good point. You know, I think we could talk about this a little bit and we just come up with maybe a list of our follow-on questions, that being one of them, and we could go back and poll each of the candidates if that seems like a reasonable direction to take. Not hearing any opposition to that. So, okay.
I do have a comment on that. Is my perception is that when people talked about the history and heritage, that Hiawatha Gardens falls under in that regard. It's part of the history and heritage of Manitou. So that's how I perceived it.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Councillor Wolf?
Thank you. I think this is perhaps more of a comment than a question, but I was just thinking, you know, myself, if I were asked to respond right now to my thoughts on spending money at Hiawatha, I wouldn't really be able to intelligently answer that at this point because it depends on so many different things. I mean, the task of this board is to prioritize, and part of prioritizing is looking at alternate sources of funding. So if I know that I can borrow a lot of money to get Hiawatha how we want it to be in terms of the parking lot, say, or the building, or both, and I know that there's, you know, a very either free or low interest loan available, then I might be inclined to use these funds instead for one of the other historic buildings that are noted in the ordinance. So it's kind of a hard question. I mean, it's a good question that Susan's asking. I think it's a hard question for people to really answer definitively because the answer is it depends. That's a comment. It's not really, I don't know if that's helpful, but to me, I don't see how you can really answer that without having a lot of other information.
Yeah, and I guess my concern was that it wasn't hardly mentioned, but it is part of this ballot initiative. And that was mainly my concern, I guess. I mean, I'm not really looking for an answer tonight. I think that's a fair comment to make, that I don't have an answer for it tonight either, but my concern is it seemed to just not be even on the radar in terms of why people wanted to be on this board. And it's one of many things in match that has to be dealt with. That's just a concern I have.
Yeah, no, I understand that. I get it.
And I didn't hear anyone mention Miramount Castle either. So I think that, you know, anyway, I would agree with Julie again that it's premature to ask specifics.
Okay.
Mayor, Councillor Chandler has her hand up.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, Judith, you have the floor.
Thank you. I believe you asked the question, what would we like to see in the makeup of the advisory board? And a couple things I was looking for. Once again, we have this incredibly wonderful problem. We have 13 outstanding candidates. What I'd like to see is representation in the arts, heritage, and culture, and with a diverse skill set. And we certainly have that in these candidates' resumes. And certainly a group that can work well together and probably be seeing each other quite a bit certainly in the beginning. And I really appreciated the candidates that stated that they were very flexible and just wanted to serve. I really appreciate that mindset. So those are some of the things I'd like to see.
Okay. Why don't we follow Councilwoman Chandler's lead and just kind of go around council and poll everybody and see what your feelings are. Councilman Shader, can you speak to this?
No, I am really tickled that we have this many candidates, and it's going to be hard prioritizing them in the list the way Judy has asked us to do it.
Okay. And John, do you see us going back and asking more questions of the candidates, or are you pretty well satisfied?
Yeah, I think I'm pretty satisfied. I mean, everybody sent in pretty thorough, applications. So,
okay.
Thank you.
So I guess, okay. I guess my point was, I was saying, how close are we to getting to deliberation? So it sounds like you were close enough to go to deliberation.
I guess so. Yeah.
I mean, I know, and we're just trying to guess everybody, and we're all out there in TV land. It gets a little confusing at times. Okay. Let's see, Councilman Bremer, would you like to speak to this?
Sure. Yeah, I looked at all the resumes this morning before I had my very busy day going around town with all the department heads. And I rank ordered them, and I like, it's an embarrassment of riches. I mean, we have every single candidate that's on there would be a great fit. So, I struggled through it, but I rank ordered them. And then as I'm watching the interviews tonight, I changed around some. It's a really difficult decision, but I think we're in a good place. I'm ready to make a decision.
You are, okay. So we don't need to go back to no more questions for the candidates if I read you. Okay. All right. Councilor Wolf?
Oh, thank you. I guess like the others before me, I have no other questions. I was really impressed with how thorough the applications were, and I spent a lot of time reviewing them and making my little notes and my charts and everything. I'm also really pleased to have such a difficult problem of choosing qualified people. That's fabulous. And I guess to respond to your question, Mayor, is I'm looking to find I don't know if a balance is the right word, but I'd like to hopefully put together a coalition of people who bring different strengths to the table. Some people may be a little stronger in finance and nonprofit management and grant writing. Other people may be stronger with other community connections in the arts and being familiar with the overview of what's happening in the arts world locally to help them make a good decision about really which maybe entity would be most deserving of our money. So I'd like to hopefully see us get a well-rounded group together, but it's a difficult challenge because there's so many great people. So we're very lucky.
Great. Thank you, Councilor Wolf. Councilwoman Woolbrook, we could come back to you. Do you have additional thoughts?
I have about 3 comments.
Okay, sure.
Again, like everyone else, I want to thank all of you for stepping up. It's wonderful to have this many people show this interest. I do have to give 2 shout outs. It doesn't have anything to do with my vote, but we asked Anna to step up and join a board, and here she is. So hats off to you. And Sarah Gallagher, it's so great to see a new face in all this process. And I'm always going around town asking for fresh faces. And I just want to give the 2 of you a shout out for that. Thank you for doing that. And don't give up, and don't, keep it up. And then I have 2 brief comments about what we're looking for. I echo Councilwoman Wolf's comments about well-rounded and balanced board. And I think that her comments about having a variety of people on the board that are strong in different areas is absolutely critical, especially since this board is going to have so much process to develop in the beginning. It'll make it go a lot faster if you have that balance of arts, culture, heritage, business, because businesses have to collect this tax and they have to remit it, and that's how it gets in the budget. And also, they're the ones who have to answer the questions when people say, why is this tax what it is, every time they buy something. So I think business is an important part of this. I'm glad to see that on here. Finance and knowledge of it. There's a couple of you who are really strong in that department. And then pretty awesome to have people who are either former city employees or former council people on here too. So I think that really speaks to Julie's concerns and all of our concerns about building a balanced board to move forward on this. So we're really fortunate, again, like everyone else, to have this. I also want everybody to take a breath and realize that this is a post-COVID world we're living in, or a current COVID world. I don't even know what kind of world it is anymore, but it changes a lot from how we looked at this maybe in February of this year, because our city budget, I just don't know what that's going to look like. I don't know what anything's going to look like. So I think I'm just giving everybody a reminder that this is going to have this added COVID dimension to it, because we just have no idea until June, and then beyond until we go into October, you know, what other money is going to be available to augment some of what match covers, and also even in the grant world, there's going to be a lot of competition for even these things that we thought maybe we could get grants for. Just kind of a reminder that preconceived notions before COVID and after COVID, things may just look a little different than what you might have expected before COVID happened. Again, thanks to all of you for stepping up tonight. This will not be an easy decision, I don't think, for any of us.
Thank you.
Right. And Susan, since you had asked about, you call out specifically the Hiawatha Gardens, and there was some discussion about that. You know, I want to be sensitive to that, but do you still feel that we need to go back and address that, or what's your sense?
No, I think I've made my point that no one really mentioned it, which seems odd to me, but I don't expect anybody to have a real answer, but acknowledgement was sort of missing from this whole panel.
Right. Okay. Understood. All right. Thank you. Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem Fortune, what's your take?
Yeah, I agree with everything that's been said. I know last week I was calling people to apply, since a week ago today we only had like 5 applicants, and then there was just a glut that came in on the last day. Poor Judy really had to struggle to get everything together. I've got to echo Shanti's comment about the alternates. I know that some people don't want to be an alternate, but I'll tell you what, that will be a very critical role to participate as an alternate. And in fact, even people who aren't selected as an alternate tonight, these will all be open meetings under the Sunshine Law, and people can attend all the meetings and in most cases participate in those meetings as well. It's just the voting that is restricted. So I think alternates are really good. And I tell you, it's going to be torture to come up with how I'm going to rank these. And if you asked me, you know, 2 minutes ago, I had one ranking, and 2 minutes from now, I'll have another ranking. So it's just going to be the exact minute that I submit my vote that it'll be locked in as to what I'm actually voting. Because it's just amazing. Thank you all for applying. Just really, really, really encouraging. Yes.
Yes. Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Yeah, and to pick up on that, I mean, 2 weeks ago, we thought this was going to be a very dull evening, and that we had like 5 candidates who were going to have to go out and solicit even more people. But so this is a great problem to have, a lot of talent out there. And I'm pleased we've got a mix of people who've been deeply embedded in community boards and activities and so forth. And we're also seeing some fresh faces and some new energy. So I think that's exciting. I think there's a kind of a resurgence of community spirit that's stepping up to the plate. So I think that's a great sign. Yeah, I think back and remember that this was a measure that passed by a simple 5 votes. And I think we've all realized it's time to go forward with this. I do think an advisory board that's representative of the greater community is important. This focuses on arts and heritage and so forth. I do think we would like to have solutions that satisfy the most people. So I take that into consideration as well. That said, I get the sense that council is ready to go into a voting mode, or do we have further? You want further discussion? Ready to vote?
And we're emailing these to Judy, right?
Right, yeah, so the procedure would be, Judy had, the city clerk had emailed us all earlier in the day. There's a roster of the candidates. To vote, you basically go ahead and you put a number of points next to your candidates. Your most, your highest ranked candidate would receive 10 points. Then it would decline. I go 9, 8, so forth until your 10th candidate receives just 1 point. Okay, so you would vote for 10 people out of 13. When you do that, please email that to Judy, and she'll go ahead and tally it up. And if there are ties or anything like that, we'll have to address that after we get the ranking, but that would be the plan. Are there any questions on that?
Can we take a break as we do that, Mayor?
Yeah, I think, yeah. So the intent, I think, would be, we would definitely take a break. So what I would suggest, council, is that we'll take a break here. We'll go ahead and if we can get our voting done first and then send that to Judy, and then we can resume maybe in 15 minutes, 20 minutes, something like that. Give ourselves 5 minutes to vote and then 15 minutes for a break. That would, I think, give Judy a chance to do the tallying.
So come back at 7:45, John? Is that,
Yeah,
do I get that right?
be good, yeah. Okay,
Perfect.
so we'll adjourn. Council members, please do your voting, email it to Judy, and then take a break, and we'll see you at 7:45.
Thank you.
Great, thank you very much.
Have a very senior right may be quite small. And that's the condition we're facing this year. We really haven't seen what would typically be a spring runoff on French Creek. It could, typically you could see flows that are measured in cubic feet per second as high as 4 or 5 or 6 cubic feet per second. We're right now at about 1.5. So it's a pretty low flow. The other consideration for us is we do have a reservoir, Manitou Reservoir. It has, at the moment, it's full and spilling. It holds 710 acre feet. The problem with the reservoir is the storage right. Unlike the direct flow right, the storage right is very, very junior. It's a 1912 storage right, which in effect means that we almost never can legally store the flows coming in from French Creek in the reservoir, which creates an issue, obviously, if we have to start drawing down the reservoir. We do have a supplemental source of supply that is the Fryark project. We have acquired an allocation from that source that this year is going to provide us 220 acre feet in storage in Pueblo Reservoir. And the challenge with that is Pueblo Reservoir is a long ways from getting into the distribution system for Manitou. So there are ways to get that water up so that we can use it or get it up into storage in Manitou Reservoir. They depend on conditions in Fountain Creek. And the flows in Fountain Creek and in the Arkansas and basically in a lot of the rivers in Colorado, because of the drought conditions we're in, are not normal this year. So that's kind of the context for where we are. So the challenge is if we don't try to control the demands, the usage of the water, what we could face is a point where the direct flow from Fountain Creek is not sufficient to meet daily demands. We would then have to start releasing water out of Manitou Reservoir. And once we release water, it's difficult to legally get water back in Manitou Reservoir. So typically when we're at the point we are in terms of direct flow, stream flow conditions, it would be prudent to look at getting the residents' attention in terms of convincing them that they should prudently use water and not waste water. The level 1 restrictions that Manitou has are basically kind of reasonable, prudent water use restrictions. They're not particularly onerous. I mean, they say things like you shouldn't water more than 3 times a week. You shouldn't water in the heat of the day. You shouldn't waste water by washing your sidewalks, things like that. They're just really normal, reasonable water conservation practices. So under the circumstances we're in, although it's hard to know exactly what's going to happen this summer, the National Weather Service is suggesting we'll have much hotter than normal weather and not a clear pattern on precip. Could be above, could be below, could be normal. But we are in a moderate drought condition that the National Weather Service predicts will persist through the summer. So that's kind of the background that would suggest it may be time to consider implementing level 1 water restrictions. And I'll turn that over to Denise then.
Thanks, Ann. Yeah, the resolution that we have in front of you, and we're watching this very closely, and we can start sending, we can make it part of the weekly report of the French Creek flow and the water usage that is happening every week. So we can start sending that. Kirk, I spoke with Kirk today, and he said we can make that part of the weekly report so all of you see it. But the resolution that we have in front of you tonight is there's a trigger point, and once it says once the ceasing of the overtop of the spillway stops, then we would immediately go into a level 1 water restriction and start watching it even closer, and maybe move into a level 2 and bring that back to you at that point. So we're just watching it day by day. Luckily, we've had lots of rain, which is great. There are some things that's happening, but we would like to be prepared. So once it happens, we can move immediately into that and then keep you informed on a weekly basis.
Good. Council, any questions for Ann or Denise? Councilor Wolf? You're muted. Julie, you're muted.
Okay. So are we being asked to pass this resolution but have it not go into effect until Denise decides it's necessary, or did I get that right?
It would pass, you would pass the resolution and it would go into effect on the trigger, which is the Manitou Reservoir ceasing to overtop the spillway. So it would not be, it would be a trigger point that says, here's the point that we need to move. I would let you guys know immediately, of course. We would put a press release ready to go, and then we would start really monitoring, and may have to go to level 2 depending on that flow. And so we would have to monitor that.
Mr. Parker.
Just to be clear, the resolution itself would go into effect immediately.
Oh, thank
but
you.
what would happen is once the trigger is hit, then the restriction would go into place. So
thank you, Jeff.
Yeah, you're welcome.
That kicks in.
So it's like a springing ordinance. Okay.
Right. Okay. Councilor Wolf, did your question?
Yeah, I just had another question. I know so little about this. So I guess this is a question for Denise or Ann. If we were to implement the level 1 restriction immediately, would that have any positive long-term effect as we get through the summer, since we're anticipating the likelihood of even a level 2? Does that help us at all, or does it not make a difference?
Ann, do you want me to respond, or do you want to take that?
I can weigh in. How
Okay.
it really helps is, again, if we can keep daily demands less than or equal to the direct flow in French Creek, which we have a high priority right to, we won't have to draw down Manitou Reservoir. And because of the fact that we have such a junior storage right, once we start drawing it down, it's difficult, clearly not impossible, but it's difficult in a drought condition to get water back in it legally. Because the best way to get water back in is through an exchange from Pueblo Reservoir up Fountain Creek into storage. And if stream conditions are low, that's just not possible. So that's the main thing you avoid, is you avoid pulling down Manitou Reservoir, which provides you with a challenge to get it back full.
And there's always the balancing act regarding the finances. If you put this in, then that means less money is coming in into the enterprise, which was not part of the rate case. So you're always trying to balance the demands with the drought with as we move forward. So when we met as a group, that's why we felt that was the trigger point. Once that happens, from the experience that both Kirk and Ann has had over the years, they felt that was the right trigger point to move into level 1.
Mm-hmm.
Good.
That doesn't really answer my question. Does that mean yes or no? I'm still confused. I mean, I understand everything Ann said, but my question is, let me try it more concisely. If we impose, not just pass this resolution, but if we change the resolution to say that it's effective immediately, not when you get to this problem down the road, does that cause us to use less water by September 1st? Does that help us if we take proactive reduction of water usage immediately? Does it help us? And I know it doesn't help us financially, but does it help us in terms of the water storage, or is it irrelevant?
And it just means that more spill goes over, correct? I mean, if we conserve now because the spill is just continuing at this point, correct?
Yeah, it's somewhat irrelevant. As long as the flows are higher than the daily demands, then it's basically irrelevant.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yes.
Other council members, do you have questions for Ann or Denise on this? Okay. I think, okay, the recommended action on this is to approve the resolution. So if we have, we can discuss this a bit more, or can we take, I'll entertain a motion.
Mayor Graham, I move we pass resolution 2220, a resolution imposing restrictions on water usage based on reservoir conditions.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Okay. If not, let's vote. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Looks like everybody
Aye.
voted.
We don't say aye on Zoom. We raise our hands.
Well, John can't see everybody.
Well, then John needs to go on a laptop and throw that iPad away.
Judy, can I ask a quick question? Judy Morgan, please help me real quick. The it says consideration of resolution 2120, but resolution number here on the resolution says 2220. We need to make sure that those two are accurate. And otherwise, Councilor Chada said, I'm
That's
sorry.
at 2220. Is that the right thing?
That's what this is showing by the resolution. I need to make sure we have that accurate.
I'm going to look it up right now.
I thank you. I just don't want to have the wrong information in the minutes. Thank you.
I understand.
Denise,
I think it's all 2220.
That's what I'm showing. And did you say 2220 or did you say 2120?
If I said 2120, I meant 2220.
Okay,
Right?
thank you. Okay, thank you. That's all I just want to make sure.
Yeah, I believe you said 2220. So.
Yeah.
All right, everybody heard that, right?
Okay, so it was my fault. Thank you.
And that's the correct number, is 2220.
Okay, so I think we're, okay. Next item of business, first reading of ordinance number 1020, an ordinance of the city of Manitou Springs, Colorado, imposing a temporary 6-month moratorium on the acceptance of applications for vacation rentals. And I believe Christine from the planning department is going to brief us on this.
Yes, so let me.
Yeah.
Maybe Michelle too, if Michelle is on.
Okay,
I don't know if both on.
I'm sorry, I believe, yeah, I think that's right. Michelle, I believe, is also participating.
Okay, so I brought Christine over. I don't see Michelle's name on the list. So maybe Christine can confirm whether she's appearing or not.
Hello. Michelle is not joining us tonight for this particular item, so you will not find her likely in the list of participants.
Okay. Okay, Christine, if you'd like to go ahead and present on this.
Sure, absolutely. Good evening, everyone. So tonight, what we are here to discuss for this particular item is the first reading of Ordinance 1020. As stated a moment ago, this is an ordinance that would impose a temporary 6-month moratorium on the acceptance of applications for vacation rentals. As all of you know, at the request of City Council at the May 26, 2020 work session, staff was directed and asked to prepare an ordinance that would do such. City Attorney Jeff Parker has prepared Ordinance 1020 for our consideration. I do not have any additional information to add to what was discussed in our prior meeting. Mr. Parker, do you have anything that you would like to add?
No, I don't, other than not hitting my stop video button by mistake.
Jeff, do you want to talk about the ordinance that we made a couple of changes today? There were a couple of.
Yeah, I believe the version in your packet is actually the revised version. We had a bit of a rush at the end of the week, and so
okay.
The typos were entirely my mistake, so I apologize for that.
Okay. Councillor Wolf?
Thank you. This is a question for Jeff Parker. Hi, Jeff.
Julie, how are you?
Good. I have a question about this sentence, the very last sentence under section 1 at the very end of the ordinance, where it says, no applications for permits shall be accepted and no permits shall be issued until 12/2/20. Does it mean no permits shall be issued unless the application has already been submitted before today? Like
Well,
we
I
have
guess
an application that's pending, but it was already submitted and voted on, and it's going to come to us on an appeal eventually. Just so we're clear that permits could be issued if they were approved prior to today. Is that right?
That's a great question, and we could basically clarify that. We could even get rid of the and no permit shall be issued, because we would only be addressing new applications. So it's a good question.
So I guess that would be my suggestion, since you're cool with it, just so everybody knows what the rules are.
So then, Councilwoman Wolf, you're suggesting an amendment there?
Oh, yeah, I mean, when we're done with discussion or whatever, I would make a motion to approve, subject to just eliminating those last few words after the word accepted in that sentence under section 1. But I don't know if people might want to discuss it.
Okay, sure.
I'll go ahead and make the motion, then we can discuss. I move to approve ordinance number 1020, subject to one modification, which is that the last sentence under section 1 be modified to state that no applications for permits shall be accepted until December 2, 2020, period.
Okay.
Do I hear a second?
I'm sorry.
Can I have a second?
Did I hear a second? Seconded by Councilman Shada. Okay, we can discuss it. Discussion. Okay, it doesn't seem like there's much interest in discussing this. So we can go ahead and do a vote. Okay, let's go ahead and vote on it. Councilwoman Wolf's motion with the amendment. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
I can see everybody, so I guess I won't bother asking for nay. So passes unanimously. Great, thank you. That was simple. Okay, next item, we have 2 public hearings. These are second readings of ordinances. I am wondering, these were fairly straightforward and moved fairly quickly. I'm going to ask the city clerk, have we had any interest in the public in making comments on these so far? I mean, we'll go through the public hearing process, of course.
Well, I do have 2 hands that are raised right now.
Okay.
I have not received any emails on it, but I do have 2 hands that are raised in the audience.
Okay, that's fine then. So what I would like to do is I'll go ahead and call the public hearing. We'll declare it open, and we'll ask Christine from planning to go ahead and give us a quick overview and move into the public comment section. So Christine?
Sure. Thank you. Judy, could you bring over Karen Birchtold and Dylan Becker?
Yes.
Well, I'm sorry, and I forgot to read the title of the material here. This is the second reading, public hearing of ordinance 0920, an ordinance of the city of Manitou Springs, Colorado, recommending participation in the Discovery Project to gather additional and current technical data that will assist in determining flood risk.
Perfect. Thank you. I see Dylan and Karen. So I'll go ahead and get started. I believe they're both there and coming on in the interest of time. So correct. So as you stated, this is the second reading and public hearing of Ordinance 0920. The staff have recommended that the City of Manitou Springs participate in the Discovery Project. Last month, staff presented to City Council an opportunity our community has to receive technical study of key flood risk areas. The Colorado Water Conservation Board is facilitating this discovery process utilizing FEMA funds. The project consultant, AECOM, will compile and finalize the discovery data. Ultimately, the CWCB and FEMA will finalize the data and complete the technical analysis. This will result in the city's firms or flood insurance rate maps to be updated as appropriate. This is an important process for the community, right? During the first reading of the ordinance, we discussed briefly how the process ties into the historical floodplain, management issues, and hazard mitigation. So tonight we've asked, at your request, Senior Planner Karen Birchtold to be available to discuss aspects of this project and how they tie into the ongoing flood-related work that she continues to do for the city. We also discussed that there may be an opportunity to have additional areas studied. After significant internal discussion, we do feel that once we understand how the FEMA study dollars ultimately equate to linear feet of waterway studied, we may be able to explore other areas. Unfortunately, it will take a few months to determine that, possibly 9 months to a year. We cannot make recommendations on that determination at this time. There will be more discussion at the technical level in the coming months, and we fully expect to bring that back to you. Keith Curtis, the floodplain manager at Pikes Peak Regional Building, will be a key resource for us as we move forward as well. And Karen may speak a bit to this during the next moments through the development of, through the use of the community's hazard mitigation plan team that was active in developing the hazard mitigation plan. There's a potential resource as well. This group included employees from planning, public works, as well as technical and scientists. So with that, I'd like to allow Karen. Karen has a couple of comments she wanted to share with you after listening to the meeting we discussed in which we discussed this a few weeks ago. And then finally, Dylan will close this second reading for us.
Okay.
Karen?
Thank you.
Good evening, everybody. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Yes.
Great, great. I'm Karen Birchtold, Senior Planner. And it was insightful to hear that the hazard mitigation plan is, I think, the new concept for a lot of council members. Which is understandable. We worked on this from about 2014 to 2017. And we've also come to the conclusion that we need to do a lot of retraining and education for staff as well. It is complex. And we all want to be on the same page. And so we're actually planning to do an update and overview of staff on the plan this summer. So just a little bit of context. We developed an integrated master plan and hazard mitigation plan. This was post flooding of 2013. And we followed an approach defined by FEMA where we do a hazard risk assessment. And so it means basically that we map our areas of risk. And for us, this was primarily flooding, geologic hazards, and wildfire. And it's interesting, when we do this kind of plan, the data that we use is called the best available data. So we might use data that we have on hand or that's open source, for instance, provided by a state agency. And so we map these areas, and then we look at our community assets and our environmental assets and determine what is vulnerable, and then develop some strategies to mitigate this risk. So we're talking about our floodplain data, which is, it's based on modeling and math. It's not like a line out in the environment. So I think it's great to hear that we have an opportunity to update this data. It will help us, I think, more clearly identify areas for preparedness and mitigation activities. It's possible that some areas are overmapped, they're too conservative, or maybe some areas are undermapped. I think it's good timing, and also, I mean, this is a significant effort, because in addition, this data informs people's need to get flood insurance if they reside within the zone and they have a mortgage, for instance. So it is important, very significant for people. And it's good timing because potentially we may be updating our plan in a couple years. And so it would be great to get some better data on hand. And that would be our new best available data, which would be a lot better. And I think Dylan also mentioned the fact that in floodplain mapping, for some time it was done in a fairly generic way. But as Dylan shared, through this project, they're going to bring in some new factors that are more specific to our unique conditions. And so that will be very helpful. And as Christine mentioned, when we did our hazard mitigation plan, we compiled what we called a hazard mitigation planning team. In the beginning of the project, this was a lot of people. We engaged experts, for instance, from NOAA, from Colorado College, from the Red Cross, and it got a little bit more focused as we sort of charted our path through the planning process. And FEMA really does want to have a very broad group, and so it included staff, it included some of our regional emergency managers, hazard planners, infrastructure experts, for instance, from Colorado Springs Utilities, business representatives, citizens, subject area experts, even some citizens that were also subject area experts. And so we really should keep this team engaged. We have not really had them active for a while. But this could be an opportunity to re-engage this group to maybe help weigh in on some of these priorities. And we might want to focus on those members who have that subject matter expertise in flooding, such as our regional floodplain manager, perhaps a Fountain Creek watershed district. And the idea of doing this is that rather than staff meeting with folks one-on-one, there's a lot of value in sort of bringing all these people together so everybody can hear some diverse perspectives on this. And so that could be a really good way to help prioritize some possible ideas for this study.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Karen.
All right. Go ahead.
No, but welcome, Dylan. You have the floor.
All right. Hello, city councilors. Thank you, Christine, and thank you, Karen, for that intro there. So based on the input thus far that Karen had just mentioned from the regional floodplain manager, as well as our dam inspector, Staff is planning to bring that information and that input and recommendations back to the discovery partners in the next coming week or so to discuss the incorporation of some of these, the recommendations made by the floodplain manager as part of the study areas. And as Karen also mentioned, she's looking to re-engage some of the members of the hazard mitigation planning team, which would be incredibly valuable and help keep our recommendations for those study areas in compliance with that plan. So tonight we're just asking for the approval of the ordinance at second reading to essentially authorize our participation in the discovery project, as it will allow the discovery partners to confirm our participation in the project more formally. Our participation in this project is important, as Karen had mentioned, as it will help us better target preparedness and mitigation activity, and will accurately identify properties that may be at risk. Mapping technologies have improved substantially in recent years, and since many of these study areas had been mapped. And also Colorado weather patterns and climate has changed over recent decades slightly, and it's likely that new gauge data is needed in our region to better reflect our flash flooding conditions. So in the coming weeks, staff will continue to work with stakeholders and partners to look more deeply at our study priority areas, what are best suited for our community, and what makes the best sense given the input of those stakeholders, our partners, and staff. Once we have all of the necessary input regarding those recommended study areas, we'll reconvene with the project partners to set those priorities in a manner that best benefits the city and the region. And staff would be happy to provide you with updates as we work out and work through those recommendations, and to keep you informed on the findings and the study areas we'll be recommending. But it is important to authorize our participation in this project through this ordinance tonight, while we continue to work with our partners to make those sound recommendations. And that's all I have for this evening. So thank you for your time, and let us know if you have any questions.
Great, thank you. Nancy, do you have a question or comment? Okay.
No.
All right. I think at this point we'd like to get into the public comment section.
Mayor, Councilor Chandler has a question.
I'm sorry, Judith. I couldn't see on screen.
Oh.
You have. Yeah.
I was actually going to move forward and make the motion, but if we're still in the discussion phase, I will wait.
Well, this is a public hearing, so now we need to entertain public comments. So that said, Judy, do we have any individuals wishing to speak to this?
John, do you want to officially open the public hearing?
Excuse me, I need to officially open the public hearing. Sorry, it's good to have little angels watching out for me. So the public hearing portion is open. Public comments to be entertained.
And there are no hands up right now. So if anybody does wish to speak, they can click on the raise hand tool. But at this time, I do not see any hands that are raised.
And Judy, just for the audience's benefit, if you could walk us through how to do the raise hand if necessary, in case anyone's not familiar.
I believe that there is, mine looks different than everyone else's, but there should be a tool that you can click on. Maybe one of you can help me with this.
At the bottom of the screen, there is a raise hand, and you can click on that raise hand. So it's at the bottom of your screen.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm in the host mode, so it doesn't give me the same option.
Okay, yeah, it looks, so seems like we don't have anyone.
Nope, no hands have gone up.
In that case, I'll close the public comment section and we'll entertain discussion. Council members, do you have any questions for Christine or the planning staff? Okay. In that case, we can entertain a motion.
I move that we approve ordinance number 0920, an ordinance of the city of Manitou Springs, Colorado, recommending participation in the Discovery Project to gather additional and current technical data that will assist in determining flood risk.
Okay, do we have a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, seconded by both Councilman Shada and Councilwoman Wolf. Okay. Any further discussion? In that case, let's vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay. Any opposed, say nay. Motion passes unanimously. Okay, thank you. And thank you to the planning staff. But stick around.
Thank
Okay,
you.
next item, second reading and public hearing of ordinance 0820, an ordinance amending section 18.30.070 of the Manitou Springs zoning code concerning conditional use violations. And again, this will be a second hearing. So if we could start, Christine, if you could go ahead and present a briefing on this.
Sure, very briefly. And
That'd be-
thank you for passing the discovery process. You guys are hearing a lot about water tonight. For those of you who've known me more than I've been with the city of Manitou Springs, you know I'm wildly passionate about all things water, whether we're short of it or we have too much of it or we don't know how it flows. So, okay, so moving forward on this one, thank you so much. This is a second reading and public hearing, as Mayor Graham mentioned, of Ordinance 0820. This amends our current zoning code, and this was to clarify, following a discussion that we had here at City Council, about what our codes indicates in terms of consequences if someone violates their conditional use permit. What tools do we have? And so as a result, this was drafted, and this is now the second reading in review of this. In our first reading, we did not have any changes that were proposed or were voted on. So this is as stands in our first reading.
Okay, thank you. And in that case, we'll, any questions right now for Christine from council? Anything for clarification? Okay, good. In that case, I will open the public comment section of this public hearing. City Clerk, do we have anyone wishing to speak in the audience?
Okay, there are no hands that are raised right now.
Okay, so we will we'll close the public comment section. And we're open to a deliberation and discussion by council. Any comments or questions? Councilwoman Wolf?
Thank you. I move to approve ordinance number 0820.
Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, any discussion? Excuse me, Mr. Shada?
No discussion.
Okay, discussion? In that case, let's go ahead and vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Motion passes unanimously. Great, thank you, Christine. Thank you again.
Fantastic, thank you.
Yeah, okay. Okay, next item of business is to receive or act on council correspondence. Does anyone want to start off? Mayor Pro Tem?
Sure, I'll start. The carriage share truck that was here with the fire department down at the pool. Apparently I was told today that the fire department has a bunch of bags left from it that are still available. So if people know of anybody who needs food, they can go to the fire department. I believe I have that correct. And there's also requests to do even more publicity. And I know they're coming around once a month now. And it's a great initiative, wonderful thing to do in our community. So thanks to, I guess, Christine, who helped put that together. So
And Karen.
Nancy. And Karen, yeah. So that's really good, along with the St. Andrews. So more publicity so folks know about it. I got a constituent talk to me today, very concerned about the cost of the appeal for short-term rentals. So just I'm letting you know that, needless to say, there's a lot of consternation about that. it's $550 to begin with, and then they just found out apparently that there's potentially even more costs that they need to submit for the appeal. So Christine, I recommended that they talk more with you about that. So if you've not gotten a phone call yet, you will be. Lastly, I was at Parab last night, and they had a good meeting. Probably the main thing they talked about was establishing an agreement with both the tree planting group and the pollinator group for to kind of work with Parab as their single point of contact to the city. So I think they're going to follow through with that, so that those two groups aren't going to multiple entities within the city to get approvals for things or to work programs and so on. So that's all. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Who'd like to go next? Councillor Wolf?
Oh, I'll defer to Susan. I think her hand was up first.
Oh, I'm
Thank you.
sorry. Susan, please.
Okay,
Yep.
I don't have any council correspondence, but while Nancy was talking, I got an email about the care and share bags that are left over. And do they just, do they go up the stairs and knock on that door that's on the second floor? That was my question from one of my neighbors.
You know what? Let's just have them come to City Hall and we will get it for them. That way they don't go into and I'll figure out if they ask for me or whatever, we'll make sure that they get it.
Okay, thank you. That'll be easier, I think, and I appreciate that answer. And I don't have any council correspondence other than all the emails that everybody got about the incline. Thank you.
Okay, all right. Thank you, Susan. Okay, who's next? Mr. Shada?
No comments.
Okay. Mr. Bremner?
Yeah, I just had some general discussions with my neighbors and people around Rexon Avenue. In addition to the comments we had earlier before the meeting from actual residents who live on Rexon Avenue or Pilot Knob. And I think it's important that we keep in mind the people that actually live on Rexon Avenue and in Manitou Springs. When we hear all these comments from people outside agitating for us to hurry up and open the incline, I think we need to put more weight on the people that actually live here rather than people that live outside. So that's just my thoughts. All my neighbors on Upper Rexton are on the same page with me and with the city council as far as the actions we're taking as far as reservation system and kind of slowing things down. So I think that's important for us to keep in mind.
Good, thank you. Councillor Wolf.
Oh, thank you. I was asked by some of my neighbors, who exactly is the Friends of the Incline, and why is Manitou staff spending so much time asking them how they feel about our incline when they don't even live here? And I said, I don't know. I don't even know really who they are, but I don't know. But why they have so much power, or why they're invited to give presentations to city council, to us, when no one else from the public is allowed to talk for more than 3 minutes. Why do we have such a deference to the opinion of these people? And I said, you know, I don't know the answer to that, but I'll ask at the council meeting if anyone can address that for me. And then I don't know if those people are listening right now or not, but I can certainly share the answer. Does anyone have an answer? Oh,
Mr. Bremner?
Well, you might remember that I was the first president of the Incline Friends back in 2010 or 2011. And so, you know, I was part of the formation of it, the whole idea. And the idea is just people that like to do the incline. So that's the people that are on the Incline Friends now. And they're advocates for the incline. So I don't think they have a nefarious agenda necessarily, but they just are, you know, they're good people and they're trying to promote the incline there. And I think they want to work with us. So I think it's good for us to work with them and have discussions with them.
And why is it that the city staff have decided to spend all this time talking to them rather than talking to our residents?
Well,
or at least a little bit of both? I mean, why?
Yeah,
I mean,
Julie,
why don't we just ask Trump how he feels, or call the senator from Minnesota? I mean, why is the incline, the Friends of the Incline, getting all the staff attention instead of, in lieu of, our Ward 3 residents?
Okay.
I don't understand that. I didn't know how to answer that question. I know, Steve, that you started the Incline group, the Friends of Incline, and you helped get it legalized, and that's fabulous, but that's history. I'm talking about now. Why do I read that a few weeks ago the staff invited the Friends of the Incline to address us when our residents can't address us except for 3 minutes or less? I don't understand that.
Okay, Julie, let me give a little bit of background. The Friends of the Incline had contacted me back in January and invited me to one of their board meetings. They had it down at Manitou Brewery, and they said, we know you've got concerns about managing the incline, about the number of people and so forth, and we'd like to, we'd like to be able to comment on that. We understand there's problems. We've sort of been addressing it. They had been working, I'm not quite sure what their role exactly was prior to that. I know they'd had some interaction with Colorado Springs Parks. And I remember at that meeting also Kurt Schroeder was there. So we did talk, we agreed to try and communicate and work through some things. I met with them once or twice with a couple of their board members, their president, Bill Beagle, and the guy that heads up their ambassador program, Bruce Barron. And we met, I remember once with Alan Dulwich, we kind of discussed our problems. This was back well before the coronavirus. This was like the end of January or early February, and they said we can appreciate your problem. We can kind of publicize some of it. We would like to interact. So that's kind of where that started. Now, when we got into when the virus came up, I had contacted them and said, it's closed. The incline's closed. Please understand. And they were actually pretty accommodating. On their website, they put a notice and said it's closed. They had a picture of the incline with no one on it. So in that sense, they've become pretty helpful. They did offer to put together their own ambassador program, which is it's volunteers. It doesn't cost Manitou anything. So, they've been at the trailhead and been helping out. And I did provide their contact information to city staff in case they wanted to contact them. And in fact, they did. And I think it's been a fairly fruitful collaboration. That's kind of where it came from. So, in a sense, I'm to blame, I guess.
I think that really helps me put it into perspective, and I hope if some of the residents are still online listening, that's helpful to them too. That really does help me. I think based on that information, however, I'd like to just suggest that going forward, we need to make it clear that we're welcoming input from anybody in any country that wants to give us input, but the people who are going to be presenting to us as council, or taking more than 3 minutes to talk to us, or using our staff time that's being paid with our tax dollars, I don't get it, and I find it offensive. Like, why? No, I'm not terribly interested. I'm not more interested in how they feel than how our residents feel. So if we're going to have a presentation going forward ever again from Friends of Incline, I would like to suggest, and if it happens, I'll make a motion when the time comes or something, that we give equal time to the residents, not 3 minutes or less, and don't talk if you agree with somebody who already said something, stay in your seat. No, I want them to get equal time, because our job is to listen to our residents who elected us, not a bunch of people who decided to join this group called Friends of Incline because they love hiking. Our goal is to protect our residents, not to further the hiking experience of the world. So anyway, I shared the concern, and I said I would try to get back to them. And John Mayer, your explanation is very helpful. I appreciate it.
Well, certainly. And if I could point out there, to the extent that there's a public opinion side of the incline, Friends of the Incline does have a lot of influence with users in the community. And to the extent that we've really had great voluntary compliance, I think, on the incline. The closure hasn't been perfect. It hasn't been impermeable, but you know, for very little money, we've gotten a lot of compliance, and I think they've had a huge hand in helping us with that. So they've basically befriended Manitou, and I think they've saved us a lot of money.
Well, and I appreciate that. I don't mean to discount that they have made important contributions to helping make the incline go more smoothly. I get that. The other thing before I move on is I also have received communication about our meetings on Zoom. And I've had people ask me, can we stay on Zoom? Do we have to go back to having to watch city council where we can't participate remotely? And maybe that's actually, I don't know if that's on the agenda, if that's an issue that someone can answer, but I, for one, am not at all comfortable going back into City Hall. I'm older, like a bunch of you, and I'm not willing to go into a building, and I don't care if the governor gives a 10 people waiver or not. He's not gonna come to my side and pay my $10,000 health insurance deductible, so no. I would like to see if there is a way that we could either have whoever wants to go back to the building can go back to the building, but the rest of us still be allowed to participate this way, or some look at that. But I am in no particular rush to get back into City Hall. And I also want to mention that there are a lot more people who get to participate by listening to our meetings on Zoom than could possibly squeeze into City Hall. Plus, it's more convenient for them because they don't have to pay babysitters and stuff. They just turn their computer on and watch for a while. So I just thought that would be food for thought. I realize that's not an agenda item, but I'm not comfortable with all of this, let's get a waiver and start meeting in person with a bunch of people in the room. I am not interested in that.
Okay. All righty. And I would note that Councilman Bremner had raised his hand during the discussion about the Incline Friends. So
I raised my hand because Roy Cheney has been raising his hand. I don't know if you can see him.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, I'm sorry, Roy. I didn't mean to. Roy, do you have something to say?
Yeah, I just, the Incline Friends have been involved for 10 years, and a lot of the folks that are part of that program. So it made sense for us to talk to them at least and see the history and what they went through as well. And I know they're not Manitou residents, but they did give us a lot of feedback on what has occurred over the years. On top of that, they have, and they still do a bunch of maintenance on the incline, which is keeping it safe for people. And then finally, the Ambassadors was a key program that, they helped us out, volunteer all the weekends. And it really helps because they get the information out to the public, and probably we're a big part of that 93% compliance. So we're using them for our benefit to keep it safe, and they've been really helpful in providing that. And otherwise, even though we learned history from them, we are listening to the residents. Just tonight, I got an email from someone from Ruxton asking about the incline. So I do respond, and and we have, and we will. And our key focus is on the residents of Manitou Springs and Ruxton. So,
right.
There are quite a few residents on Incline Friends as well. I mean, I don't want to totally say that they're external, because there are quite a few people in Manitou who are members of Incline Friends.
But that's true. Okay.
If I might just have one last thing and then I'll shut up.
Oh, okay, Julie, go ahead.
May I?
Yeah, go ahead.
Just to mention that also a person contacted me and said he was very supportive of our efforts to try and regulate the numbers of people on the incline, that he was a regular incline user, and he also has asthma and is very cautious about wearing a mask at all times because of his compromised respiratory problems. And he is thrilled that he'll be able to go back to the incline at some point where it won't be so crowded with people that he's too afraid to go. And I said, well, great, I appreciate that support. So I just wanted to share that with you all, that even though we get a lot of complaints about why can't you just open the incline and have it go back to how it used to, there are people who live here who really appreciate the fact that we're trying to regulate the crowdedness of it all.
Good. Okay, thank you. Okay. Counselor Chandler, I don't think we've heard from you yet. Do you?
Well, first of all, again, it's been said a number of times, but thank you to the 13 outstanding candidates who stepped up to the plate to be on the match advisory board, and congratulations to the new advisory board. Really looking forward to working with you. I'm so excited. Yeah, so we all received several correspondences about the incline, but I just wanted to thank those who took the time. Well, I want to thank everybody who took the time to email us. It's a very, very passionate issue, but specifically the individuals who took the time to email thanking us and understanding the big picture of what we're really trying to do here, which is to protect the health and safety and well-being of our residents, as well as the environment, so that no matter who comes to visit the incline will have a positive experience on our attraction, not a trail. Let's see, I had one more thing, but it skipped my mind, so I guess that's it for me now.
Okay. All righty. And I've had correspondence, but you can pretty well imagine you've gotten it too, so I don't really have a whole lot more to mention that for now. Okay. I think everybody had a chance to speak on that.
I think there's a dog who wants to speak.
That's fair representation. Okay. Let's go on to entertain ideas for future agendas. Does anyone have any recommendations? Things they'd like to see on future agendas? So I guess not. I think we've got a fair.
Judith has her hand raised,
Oh,
John.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
Well, this segued into what Councilor Wolf was saying. Are we going to be discussing if and when we will be returning to a different format other than Zoom? I have had a number of questions from residents about that. And I'm going to see why my dog's barking.
I think we're monitoring that situation pretty closely. I don't think there's any anticipated time for going back to regular meetings. I mean, I know there was the city staff had figured out how we might be able to have a layout in the large room in Memorial Hall for public meetings. It'd still be socially distanced, but I think we're still away from getting to that point. I know, Denise, do you have anything to add on that to bring us up to date?
Nope, that's totally up to you guys. We can put something in place if you want, or we can keep going with the Zoom. It's really up to you of how to manage and move forward.
Okay, I don't know, does that give any guidance, Judith, or do you?
We can make it a work session. We can tell you what we can do if you want to do that, and then you can give us direction. Yes, you want us to move that way, or you can say keep it as is right now, and we'll talk about it at a later date. It's really your call of how you want us to manage that.
Judith, I'll let you respond to that.
Judith had to take care of her dog.
Sorry, every night that there's the howl, my little puppy goes crazy for the rest of the night. So my apologies. Yeah, that would be fine. That would be fine. I'm in no hurry to get back together. And I guess I remember what I was going to say. The last thing was in Ms. Rattery's correspondence with us. She said, "What's different now than 5 years ago?" And I guess we all just know what that answer is, and it's a global pandemic that's killed over 103,000 of us in the United States. So I think it's a really pertinent topic for us to discuss.
Okay, all right. Okay, good, thank you. I'm sorry, Councilman Shady has his hand up, but the city clerk has, I think she's got a concern. Judy?
I kind of have an unusual situation. We do have somebody that has had his hand up off and on, and he's been texting me and emailing me. I guess he came on to speak regarding one of our agenda items, the 6-month moratorium on the vacation rentals, and he's just asking I make you aware that he was here for that. He wants to speak on that. He didn't get called on. I did look for hands being raised, but somehow it didn't happen. So I'm not really sure what you want to do about it, but I did let him know that I would let you know that he did come specifically to the meeting. And
Okay, if he can stand by, I'd like to finish this item of business, and then we can see how council feels on that. Okay, thanks, Judith. Councilman Shade, I saw you'd raised your hand there.
Yeah, I guess I want to make sure that, and Judy, I know we put at the bottom, that if you need assistance in, participating in the meetings, ADA issues and stuff like that. And I guess I was wondering if we could just enlarge that to that boilerplate at the bottom of our agendas that say that if you feel like you need assistance, and because we do need, meet by Zoom, we're willing to make some kind of an accommodation. You know what I mean? I'm just trying to make sure that everybody possibly can participate, And I know that Denise or somebody, I can't remember who it was that wrote the memo that talked about, if we had like limited access down at City Hall. I just want to make sure that we bend over backwards, making sure that anybody who needs to participate, can, and that we're gonna, and we will try and figure out how to work that out, since this thing doesn't seem to be going away anytime soon. And then the second thing, Mayor John, what I was going to suggest is if somebody missed an item because of sort of kind of the technology and stuff like that, I guess I don't have a problem if somebody needs to speak to one of those hearing issues where we just pass the law, that we reopen that hearing if we need to and reconsider that given their comment. Because I think, there's some people that it's hard to figure out how to kind of raise your hand and chat and the whole 9 yards. That's just my suggestion.
And just for your knowledge, that particular item is the first reading on that. So it was approved as a first reading, but.
Well, no, I was talking about any of our hearings that were second reading.
Right. But the gentleman who didn't get to speak, he wanted to speak about the.
Yeah, exactly. And so that's probably not going to be an issue. But
Sure.
anyway. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So, okay. Good to know you're thinking on that. Okay. Let's go ahead and consider the agenda things first, and then Judy will come back to see what to do about this gentleman that wanted to address something on first reading. Okay. Let's see. Does anyone else have suggestions or requests for agenda items? And I'm sorry, Susan, I can't see you, or Judith. So, do either of you have anything?
Yeah.
Susan's good. I don't see her hands.
Okay.
Just need to mention, Mayor, I just want to make sure I understand. I don't think we're going to put meetings on the agenda in the future. It sounds like everybody is saying let's stay status quo right now. Or do you want us to come with a plan of how we could do it? I just need direction from you of what you want.
The sense I get is that we're more comfortable doing what we're doing now and sticking with it indefinitely.
Okay, thank you.
I'm not comfortable sticking with it indefinitely, so I'm comfortable with not discussing it in the next couple of weeks until we get more guidance, and see where things are going. But I personally would prefer to get back to socially distant in-person meetings.
Yeah. I guess I feel that way also, socially distanced in-person meetings, but I'm not in a huge hurry. So it seems like we've got other problems we can address in the meantime, if that's okay. So now going back to this gentleman that he had wanted to speak apparently, but this was a first reading on the ordinance. We normally wouldn't entertain public discussion then. Generally, if council's okay, we could let the gentleman talk for a little bit here, with the understanding, or Judy, you could also tell him that at second reading in 2 weeks, he'd be able to address council.
I shared that with him.
You already shared that?
Yes, I already shared that with him, but he would like to speak tonight.
And he can also email all of us his issues.
I did. He came specifically and sat through the meeting hoping he could speak on it. So
I guess I'd like to hear him speak, please.
Yeah, let's just hear him speak. We're talking about for 10 minutes if he should speak or not. He's only going to speak for 3 minutes because that's all he's allowed. Let's just go with it.
Okay, yeah, Judy, if you could bring him in, then we'll just do it and get it done.
Okay, and Jeff, if we could just get some guidance here, do we need to open that agenda item back up to allow him to speak, or?
No, it's fine. You just give him a chance to comment. It's totally fine.
Yeah,
right.
We'll let him talk.
I'm bringing him over. His name is Tim O'Leary, and I just slid him over here, so let's make sure he can unmute himself. Okay.
Hi guys.
O'Leary?
Hi guys. Thank you for all the comments. I've been watching you guys for over 3 hours. I'm a business owner, so you can imagine I'm very tired. As I'm sure all you guys are. Here's all I want to say, and I will make this very brief, and I appreciate all you guys letting me address this. I own a house on Pawnee Avenue in Manitou. I'm a business owner. I pull a lot of permits in Manitou, which is insignificant, but I have been in the process of dealing with your department down there for months. I renovated a 1920s home in the community that looks absolutely stunning. It was from day one, always known. I've dealt with Michelle, Dylan, and from day one, knowing it was going to be a rental, I went through, I have 2-inch papers, and I can't tell you how many hours of going through this, of getting all this arduous paperwork done. And I got an email this today. It was crushing, that if you don't have all your information turned in, because the department's closed down, I spent $800 yesterday for a plot plan. I mean, I have got so much time and energy and effort, and your guys have been wonderful down at the building department and everything, walking me through this. And then she sends me an email, Michelle does today, and says, Tim, I know it's short notice, but we have a meeting that's going to put this off for 6 months. Now, my point is this, and again, I'm going to end this real quick. Every single bit of construction with the design of it, I have bought sheets, pictures, dishes, silverware. I mean, everything for a rental house. And I can't even get my plot plan in on 5 hours notice. And I get what you said, Wolf, I think. I'm sorry. But, you know, if it's not turned in by today, it's just done. And you guys kind of chuckled about it. But I am not kidding you guys. I have endless hours, more than you can even imagine, to do this. And I feel like the rug's been slipped out from under me. And I'm just, all I can ask from you guys is, I know there can't be that many people, but I am so close and I have so much time, so much money, because the departments have been shut down of things I have to do on my own. And I'm like one step away, and you want to wait 6 months. I can't wait 6 months. I mean, I got 8,000 to 10,000 just in all the inner stuff. I have couches, furniture, beds, pictures. So all I ask is if you guys would even consider, you know, people like me that are that close. I've called all the neighbors. I sent everything out. There's no homes. I meet all the requirements. I just can't, I couldn't get it done today. So that's my thing, is I would love for you guys to give me an opportunity, even a week. That's all I ask. But the devastation of my house, I mean, even the construction went into being a rental house, not something for sale, or a vacation rental, not something I rent full time, not something, you know, I'm going to sell. So that's it, guys. I would like just a week.
Okay. All right.
We need his address and his contact info, please.
Yeah, could you provide your address and contact information to the city clerk, please?
Yep, I will do that. And like I said, they know us. I mean, I'm down there every week pulling permits. Well, not lately, but Michelle and Dylan, I deal with, I mean, on a daily basis on this. So,
okay.
So I mean, if you tell me who you want me to get the information to,
all right,
and
just provide your contact information to the city clerk, Judy Morgan.
Yeah, I will do that.
Okay.
So thank you for your time, you guys. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you.
All right.
Okay.
Bye.
Okay, thank you. So next agenda item would be the city administrator's report. Mr. Cheney, do you have anything?
Just real quick, the state has announced some guidelines and over the next couple of days on possible opening of pools and playgrounds. So we'll be researching that when it comes out, and maybe we can open something up. So that's all I have. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you. Denise?
Just a couple of quick things. Remember, USGS is next week. They will be here for their presentation. And the senior parade, I sent out a quick email, but it was amazing and a great way to celebrate the seniors. It was a very positive experience. So just want to shout out to everybody who helped with that. And then, of course, Karen shared today, Christine and Karen, and for all of their hard work organizing that. And yes, we will do more on the promotion. This first time we didn't do a lot, just kind of seeing how it went, but we will start promoting that at a higher level. So yes, yeah, Julie?
Thank you, Denise. I was just wondering, is there already been a determination about how much time would be set aside next week for the USGS thing? The reason I ask is I've gotten so much communication from David Wolverton.
Okay.
He loves to talk about this stuff. Some of it's over my head. He has taught me a lot, but I really think it would be helpful if we could include him in next week without the 3-minute rule.
Right.
But do you have time to do that with how you've scheduled the agenda outline?
I think we have the flexibility to do that. Yeah, I mean, Dave's kind of a subject matter expert for the community here. I think that would probably be valuable. I know he's been made aware that meeting is occurring, or that subject's going to be discussed next week. I don't know. I think he's in town. I don't know that for sure, but that seems reasonable.
I promised to text him, but the answer, because the 3-minute rule doesn't really work out for Dave on this issue, and it's not really fair to us to take a free local expert and force him to sit down after 3 minutes. So may I text him and tell him that, yes, he's going to be welcome to join us next week with the USGS presentation? Or is that something maybe that Denise would do instead of me?
The one thing, and Julie, I think this is you guys, it's up to you. We offered, and we can offer again if it works, is for Dave and USGS to sit down and talk together so that they can have a robust conversation and really go back and forth and have that conversation, if that is something that you guys want. But that might be an opportunity that the two of them just sit down and we can be there, part of that conversation, and have that robust conversation. It's up to you guys.
I did ask Dave about that, and he had this long explanation about how that's not acceptable, that doesn't work, because, you know, da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da. I need to explain to council that da-da-da-da-da-da. I was like, oh my gosh, okay.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
I'll invite him. I'll tell him he can come and he doesn't have to stop talking after 3 minutes, and that maybe between the two of them, we can figure out what their problem, what the problem is, if anything. But yeah,
it's maybe our only hope. Mayor Pro Tem, did you raise you had your hand up, Nancy? Okay.
No.
Okay. Okay. All right. So that's the city administrator's report. Next, we've scheduled an executive session. We have 2 items on it. The first is an executive session to determine positions relative to matters that may be subject to negotiations, develop strategy for negotiations, and instruct negotiators pursuant to section 5.1D of the Manitou Springs City Charter concerning the arrangement with the Pikes Peak Library District. And then the second item is an executive session to hold a conference with the city attorney for legal advice regarding incline enforcement pursuant to section 5.1C of the Manitou Springs City Charter. We'd need a motion and a second to go into executive session, and then we'll need to give Judy an opportunity to take care of that administratively.
I move we go into an executive session.
Motion?
I'll second.
We motion a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, and Judy, if you can remove the other participants Judy, you're muted.
We do have attendees that will all have to get off there, and then I'm going to switch over the host to Roy. who's going
Okay,
to-
great. Okay.
And I'll leave the
And then,
meeting.
okay, and then Roy, you'll let us know when it's okay to start.
Correct.
Thank you.
Okay, Roy, you're about to get the host duties.
Okay, I see it.
And we still have panelists, Judy,
Yes.
or not a panelist, attendees, sorry.
So Roy, you'll need to, well, we can just tell the attendees they will need to log off. That's Becca Sickbert, Carl, Don, Jack Elder, Kirk, and Chichacha Unicorns. You can all leave the meeting now, please. Otherwise, we have to do it, and it makes it harder for you to get back in the next time.
Yeah, we're down to 3. Jack's
Two.
off.
Kirk.
2. What do you
down.
think, Judy? Should I remove them?
Yeah, I'm just sending him a chat right now, hoping that
Okay.
that will prompt them. They might have just stepped away, maybe didn't realize. So yeah, I think we're just gonna have to remove them because they're been able to leave the meeting by now.
All right, so,
And now I will leave the meeting.
okay, so they're all removed.
Okay, just keep an eye out that nobody pops in.
Okay.
I'll watch that, Roy, because since you're managing everything else, I'll try to watch that.
Okay, good luck.
All right.
Oh, people can pop in to our executive session?
They're not supposed to.
Right.
Well, is it honor system?
No, we can see them coming in. So we just, if we see someone come, we'll remove them.
Oh,
So we'll just watch. Yeah.
all right.
Okay,
Okay.
okay, bye-bye.